His writing career has spanned 50 years, bringing us hits like Easter Parade. How about his best-selling novel and movie, The Other Side of Midnight, and the television sitcom, I Dream of Jeannie? This multi-talented man is Sidney Sheldon, and he's here to talk about his incredible career and his latest work, which is a little bit of a departure and a wonderful book. And Sidney, it's just great to have you here.
Thank you, Eileen. I'm delighted to be here with you.
What a master storyteller you are. You know, you just bring such people such joy. Let's see if I can get this right. You've won an Oscar, a Tony, an Edgar Allan Poe Award. You've written 30 movies, 6 Broadway plays, 10 novels, not to mention 3 television series. Do you have your thumb on the pulse of what America wants? Is that the secret? What is it?
Well, people have asked how to write a bestseller. The answer is very simple. I don't know. If I sat down to write a bestseller, what I would be saying is, I want to reach the lowest common denominator to get the most number of readers. And I think if you tried to please everybody, you wind up pleasing almost nobody. It's not a question of trying to get the pulse of the people, because my readers are scientists and truck drivers, teachers, students, you know, and I'm in 64 countries. So how do you please a scientist in Yugoslavia and a truck driver in South Africa? I'd go crazy if I tried to do that. What I do is to get an idea that excites me, and then I spend 2.5 years writing it as best I know how.
You've worked with such greats. I mean, in addition to what people know, I wonder if they realize Bing Crosby, Cary Grant, Fred Astaire, Judy Garland.
Yes. I'll finish it later. She said, no, finish it now. And I said, what's the matter? Don't you want to shoot this scene? And she said, no. And I said, why? And she said, because in this first scene, I have to kiss Mr. Astaire, and I've never met him. Oh. Everyone assumed these two superstars knew each other. So I took Judy by the hand, led her over to Fred, introduced them, and she went on with the scene.
Oh, isn't that great? It's just amazing to me that, I mean, you did Jumbo, Annie Get Your Gun. You have done so many major screenplays. What, did you start out to write a novel, to do a screenplay, or to act?
No, I went to Hollywood to be a writer. And I went around, I was 17 when I went to Hollywood.
What'd you tell your folks?
What did I tell them?
You said you'd be back?
Well, my mother gave me 2 weeks to find a job because it was during the Depression, and our home was Chicago. And when I got to Hollywood, I went around to the studios and said, my name is Sidney Sheldon. I want to be a writer. Who do I see? And all the policemen at the gates said the same thing. You don't see anybody. I couldn't get in, and my time was running out. And I heard about readers, people who synopsize stories for busy producers. So I sat down and wrote a synopsis of Steinbeck's great book of Mice and Men. And I sent a copy to all the studios. And within 2 days, I had a job at Universal as a reader.
So you used your ingenuity, didn't you? I mean, I guess
you have to find a way to get in, because, you know, all the studios, even today, say they're desperate for talent. And all the talented people on the outside of the gate are trying to get in. And there are big barriers there. So you have to find a Trojan horse, a way to circumvent that and get in.
Growing up in the Depression, and really a very little means, and your father and mother finished the 3rd grade, is that right?
They were dropouts, yes.
Yeah. Did your mom and dad ever read a book?
My father never read a book. My mother loved to read, and she inculcated in me the love of reading.
Is that a part of why you're a writer? Because you love the written word?
But I knew. Well, I saw my first poem when I was 10. I always knew I wanted to be a writer. My father was a salesman and kind of street smart and tough. And the fact that I wanted to be a writer made him nervous. And the fact that I was writing poetry made him very nervous. I wrote a poem and asked him to send it into a magazine I was reading called Wee Wisdom for Children. And he said, all right. And he sent it in. But I later found out he didn't want to be embarrassed when they rejected it, so he sent it in under my uncle's name. Aww. And 2 weeks later, he had lunch with my uncle, who said to him, why would Wee Wisdom magazine send me a check for $5? So I sold my first poem under the name of Albert Marcus.
If by some miracle your father could reappear by your side now and see the success you've had, what might he say? Would he be astounded?
No, because I was fairly successful before he passed away.
You were, so he saw that. Wasn't that good that you got to share that?
Right.
Huh? You also, I mean, you went into World War II, and when you came out, you went to Broadway rather than Hollywood.
Well, actually, I was in service. I went in and became a pilot. I got my wings for primary training, and while waiting to get into a secondary flying school, I went to New York. I was still in uniform. And my agent said to me, Jan Kapoor and Marta Eggert, who were two popular singers then, are looking for someone to write a new book for The Merry Widow. And I met with them, they liked me, and a former collaborator of mine, Ben Roberts, and I wrote The Merry Widow. It was a wonderful production. George Balanchine, for example, was our choreographer, Robert Stoltz, the conductor. Anyway, Balanchine loved what we had written, and he took me to see another producer. And he hired me to do a show called Jackpot. And while we were doing Jackpot, someone hired me, brought me over to Richard Kalmer and Dorothy Kilgallen. And they were doing a show with Zarina called Dream with Music. Anyway, when I was 25 years old, still in uniform, I had 3 shows running on Broadway.
Oh, amazing. And then talk about television. Move up to the Patty Duke Show. An unprecedented, not only the creation, but an unprecedented 78 scripts written by you.
Anyway, I agreed to meet with Patty. We had lunch. Before the lunch was over, I'd fallen in love with her. She was about 14, never let go of my hand. She was so hungry for love. At the end of that lunch, I said, I'll create a show for her. And I created the Patty Duke Show. But I wanted to do Patty justice because I felt she was so brilliantly talented. And I said, I'll only do the show if I can write all the scripts. Never having worked in television, Eileen, I didn't know that every show, every sitcom, had staffs of writers. No one writer ever wrote a whole show. But United Artists, the producing company, wanted me. So they said, fine, you can write all the shows. I learned later that afternoon, when I signed the contract, they went out and hired 3 writers to write scripts so that when I came to them, panicky and said, I don't have a script for next week, they would say, here you are. We never used any of those scripts. I wrote all those scripts for 2 years. And after 3 months, the show had been on 3 months, I got a call from Columbia. Screen Gems wanted me to come over there and create my own company, create shows for them. So I did a series called I Dream of Jeannie, produced it, and wrote all those scripts for 5 years. I was doing both shows at the same time. I wanted real problems to contrast with the fantasy of it.
And it worked. It really worked.
It's on everywhere in the world every day.
Larry Hagman and Barbara Eden, still friends?
Oh, yes, they're
Yeah?
friends. As a matter of fact, she just recently did a Dallas with him before it went off the air.
You know, then you moved to Robert Wagner and Stephanie Powers, two terrific human beings. Anyone who's met them has to say that. They're good.
Cheers is not good. It's brilliant.
Okay.
It's one of the best written, acted, directed shows on television. I love it. It compares with the early Dick Van Dyke shows, the Mary Tyler Moore shows. Those are wonderful shows. Yeah, I love Cheers. I don't watch a lot of sitcoms.
Because you think some of them lack some quality? I mean,
I think so.
I think the
Without
American
naming them,
public
no,
in
I
some
like
ways.
to watch old movies on television and, of course, the news.
Yeah. But we've got to talk novels. We've got to talk the new one. UFOs?
UFOs.
Concern for the environment? And a male who is the central character here, not a female. A little bit of a departure for Sidney. We'll talk about a lot of things when we return with Sidney Sheldon. Don't go away. Author Sidney Sheldon joins us. Rage of Angels, The Other Side of Midnight, no, Memories of Midnight. The other side of midnight. I just finished Memories of Midnight. It's here. I asked you to sign it.
Right.
And now the Doomsday Conspiracy. Before we even talk about the idea for this, you have said to interviewers and others that you begin a novel without knowing what the plot is.
That's right.
How do you do that?
Well, in the case of Doomsday Conspiracy, I love reading suspense books, and I wanted to write a suspense book with a puzzle that's impossible to solve. So in this book, I have a spy, an agent who is with the Office of Naval Intelligence, and he is assigned to go to Switzerland to find witnesses who saw a weather balloon that crashed. Now the problem is that he has to solve. The witnesses were on a tour bus. No one knows how many there were, who they are, or where they are. They're all scattered, but he has to find them. So while he's undertaking that assignment, he learns that when he's finished with it, he's going to be eliminated himself.
Don't tell the whole thing.
But that's it. I mean, it's the fun. Getting there is half the fun.
It is, but also there is a UFO twist here.
Right.
And what was the inspiration for this? The UFO issue, the environmental issue, the world environment. I mean,
Well, first of all, I think we're all interested in the world environment, and if we're not, we certainly should be.
Yeah.
So that's an element in the book. As far as UFOs are concerned, it's something I think that we're all curious about. I had a lot of questions when I started. I telephoned 12 astronauts. I read that they had had experiences with UFOs.
Mm-hmm.
All of them said, when I talked to them, no, they had not. But one of them, Colonel Gordon Cooper, called me back. And I missed his call. And when I tried to reach him again, he was suddenly unavailable. 1 year later, I got hold of a letter he purportedly had written saying that he had seen UFOs and had experience with them. And the letter was to a government official saying that he felt they should set up a formal board to investigate UFOs. I called Colonel Cooper again, and I read him the letter. And I said, "Did you write this?" And he said, "Yes." So I said, "We've got to talk." I had dinner with him. He told me that when he was in Germany, he saw a flight of UFOs, and our Air Force chased them. Now, at that time, we could only go to 45,000 feet. These UFOs disappeared at 90,000 feet, at speeds we couldn't begin to approximate.
So, are you a believer?
I think it's possible. I've never seen a UFO, so I can't say they exist. But I think they could exist. Carl Sagan says that there are 250 billion stars, and that he thinks at least 1 million of them can support life.
But in this book, you point out when Orson Welles pulled his hoax in the War of the Worlds, and people were killed trying to get out of town, and people had heart attacks, and you point out that if, in fact, our government knew of the existence and told the American people, we might panic, or the world's people, we might panic.
In the book, it says that if there is a government cover-up, it's because of exactly that.
Now, I didn't miss the central figure being a female heroine and very strong woman, but I do love it, and I think a lot of women really do love it when you make that central character female. Are you a feminist?
Am I a feminist?
Yeah.
To a degree. I'm not a feminist when it comes to women getting shrill about asking for their rights. Women have it made. I mean, they own the world. All they have to do is be themselves. I'm for women getting equal pay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I know so many women who are beautiful and capable. They run companies. Sherry Lansing runs a studio.
Sure.
They're wonderful at what they do. And they retain their femininity. And I love writing about women like that. I love women. So that's important. Sometimes the feminist movement gets so shrill that they defeat their own purpose. They don't have to do that.
You have a beautiful, beautiful lady in your
I know,
life.
and she has all those qualities. She's intelligent and caring, nurturing, wonderful.
And she's here with you.
She's here with
Alexandra,
me.
am I
Alexandra.
right? And she was telling me in the green room this morning, we were talking, that you have been in 27 countries in the last 3 years.
That's right, doing research.
So then, a lot of writers, I would imagine, have a bevy of researchers they call on. Not you. You're hands-on,
No,
aren't you?
Absolutely. I won't write about a meal in Tanganyika or in Oslo unless I've had that meal at that restaurant. I think the readers know the difference. I'd be cheating them otherwise.
Well, then how do you get inside the intelligence agencies in this country, the Pentagon, to learn what you learned to write the Doomsday Conspiracy?
Well, I called the CIA, talked to the man who was in charge of public relations, said, "I'm Sidney Sheldon." Oh, he was so cordial. He said, "I read all your books. That's wonderful." Well, I was in, right? I said, "I'd like to come in."
Do you think you got the truth? Do you get the truth when you always, or do you know?
Well, listen what happened. I said, "I'd like to come in and look around." He said, "No." I said, "Well, I just want to see what the offices look like and the corridor so I can write." He said, "No." Now, I called some friends of mine, some senators and ambassadors in Washington, and they called him. And they called me back and said, "You can't get in." Finally, I called him again. I said, "Look, I'm going to write about it anyway, and I'd like it to be accurate. Can't you give me any information?" He said, "You're going to be in your hotel room in 2 hours." I said, "Yes." 2 hours later, a man arrived with a manila envelope. My name wasn't on it, CIA wasn't on it, nothing. He gave me the envelope, I opened it, and it was the recruiting brochures that they give to people they want to become agent. So I got a description of the offices and what they do there, what it's like. And it was fine. That was enough for me to use.
When you, speaking of accuracy, you write a novel, and having been a screenwriter, when it suddenly then goes to miniseries, do you write the screenplay?
No. I've done enough movies. I'm too busy on my next book, Eileen.
But do you ever feel cheated in the translation?
No, because I'm either executive producer or just in the background, because they tell me who they want to write it, and I approve or don't approve. They discuss cast with me. So I'm really involved.
So you make sure that the
right.
reader isn't cheated when they see it on television.
Exactly.
Your women must just, in throngs, want to play your heroines, like Susan Sarandon and Jacqueline Smith. I mean, women must love the way you write.
They do, because I write, I think, good women's parts. But the Doomsday Conspiracy has been sold to Warner Brothers. It'll be a big movie, probably out next year.
A big television movie?
No.
Oh.
Theatrical. Joel Silver, who produced, remember the Die Hard movies?
Sure.
Lethal Weapon movies?
Oh, gee, you have a little success behind you here now.
They were produced by Joel Silver, and Joel bought the Doomsday Conspiracy before it was written.
Now, is your daughter following in your footsteps?
Oh, yeah, she's a wonderful writer. Her name is Mary. She writes under the name of Mary Sheldon. And she's a young J.D. Salinger, very sensitive writer.
What were your words of encouragement to her? Did you just teach her to love the written word?
No, but she always, when I was doing the Patty Duke show, I remember we went on a cruise. She was then about, I guess, 12, 13 years old. And I didn't take any of the scripts with me because we were through for the season. And I got a call that they were short 2-3 minutes in various scripts. I couldn't remember what the scripts were about because I concentrate very deeply when I write it and then forget and go on the next thing. Mary told me not only what the different scripts were about, but all the dialogue in them, so I was able to fill in those missing minutes.
So
she's always been, she's wonderful.
Really cared, huh? That must make you proud.
I'm very proud of it.
You know, as much as the public obviously loves your work, you've also had some controversy, like Reverend Falwell and some folks who have said, pull those books out of classrooms, off the library shelves.
What drives me crazy is when someone sets himself up to tell other adults what they can read or see in theaters, or think. I mean, I hate censorship.
You never feel a need for it? You never think some folks go over the top?
The only time I feel there's a need for censorship is when children are involved.
Okay.
But I think adults should be able to see, do whatever they like as long as it doesn't hurt anyone else.
You know, I would just wonder, with all that you've done, when you have this natural God-given ability, because you didn't go to school for this, is there any area of writing that you would love to have time to tackle?
Not really, because I've done theater and books and television and movies. That pretty well covers it.
Well, how about poetry?
Well, I've done poetry.
You did that,
I
but
set out to be a songwriter.
I
and
know.
I've written a few songs. And in the Patty Duke show, I used some of my songs.
And also, you tried your hand at acting.
Well, not exactly. What happened was, when I was doing the Best of the Bobby Soxer, Cary Grant and I were having lunch. And he said to me, we're having a terrible time casting the second male lead. We've tested 20 actors. He said, do you know who'd be perfect for it? And I said, who? And he said, you.
Oh.
Would you test? Why not? I'm in my 20s. This is Cary Grant. I didn't know any, but I said, of course. He set it up so that we went on the sound stage. The director was all ready. Now, remember, Eileen, I had written the original story of The Bats and the Bobby Soxer, the screenplay, and the test scene. And the scene was between just Cary and me. We get on the stage. The director says, action. Cary gives me my cue. And I look around at these millions of people up there staring at me. And I didn't say a word. I turned and ran off that sound stage and I was panicking.
Oh,
that was my acting career.
Some say that the life of a writer is a very lonely life because until the work is finished, there are no pats on the back. What keeps you going when you're working on something?
I'm not lonely. I have my characters. They're all very real to me. I feel every emotion they feel. And writing, to me, is the most exciting thing in the world. Most of my writer friends, in fact, I can't think of any exceptions, hate writing. They love having written. I love the actual act of creation.
Do you?
Oh, it's so exciting.
It shows. It really shows. This is such a good book. Get out and get it. The Doomsday Conspiracy. And all of the others, too, are still around in hardback. All bestsellers. Huh? Isn't it amazing? Gee, I wish you long life, happiness, and lots more books.
Thank you.
What are you working on now, Sidney?
I have a new book. It's already been sold to Warner Brothers. Arnold Copelson, who produced Platoon, has bought it. I don't have a title yet. It'll be out next year.
Scotland.
Partly.
Great. All right, we look forward to it. Nice to see you. Best of luck in your travels.